Why is it that there are millions of e-commerce entrepreneurs, but so few of us end up making money? Welcome to Season 1, Episode 1 of Margin Talks by Finaloop. Today we have Dave Spandorfer, and we're here to help answer this question. You'll hear Dave talk about how they started in B2B wholesale, then later launched on Shopify, how they've grown organically the last decade to become an 8-figure apparel running brand. You'll also get special inserts from Jacob at Finaloop, the head of education on finance best practices. So make sure you tune in for the full episode. Dave, thanks so much for taking your time.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
We're going to dive straight in and then backfill with background in a moment. But we like spicy takes out of the gate. So sustainability, it's been super trendy for the last 10 years. It's hashtag sustainability everywhere. But some of the fastest growing consumer businesses, Shein, Fashion Nova, are the opposite of sustainability. What does the consumer actually want? How should brands think about sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no monolithic consumer, right? You're going to get people who want really good-looking stuff that they can wear once and then throw it away, and you're going to have people who are going to buy Shein and Fashion Nova. I mean, it turns out when you make stuff really cheaply, it's compelling for people, especially who don't have the biggest budget. Now, in terms of people who are loudest on the internet or who are virtual signaling, you're going to get people who really care deeply about sustainability. It's something that I care about. And so, what we have with our audience and what you have with runners, right? And I'll just speak purely sort of what our market is, which is runners and people who care about running. It's you're not going to buy a piece and then it's going to fall off immediately. You run a 100-mile run, you buy something off of Shein, it's $9. It's not going to be particularly good for it. But look, I totally get it. And so I think there's there is within consumer, you see this more broadly, there's a bifurcation, right? You get people in the retail side, who's doing really well? TJ Maxx. People want cheap stuff and they want good value for that cheap stuff. And then you've got people, of course, on the highest end, right, of anything within the LVMH portfolio here in the US and Europe. I mean, ignore China for a second. They're doing pretty well. And so how we think about it is we as a brand care deeply around sustainability. And we can talk about all the things that we do. But I think for a lot of brands that appeal to the type of consumers that we have, no one's going to buy it just because it's sustainable. It's table stakes for that consumer. And so I see it as you need to be able to hit all those other core items, a great brand, a great product, and you got to make things as sustainable as possible to hit that consumer on a table stake side. But cheap stuff that's in fashion, it's going to win up until, the government does something because of all the externalities that happen with G7. We're seeing some of that with, some of the new regulations that come in with some Chinese importing laws.
And do you think that for your customer that is, kind of has a little bit more discretionary income, are they more interested in sustainability over the kind of last decade, or you think it's still at the same level, which, like you said, they care, but they're not going to buy because of it?
Oh, it's a great question. I would say they care more, but because everyone's doing it, it becomes less of a reason to buy.
Yeah, interesting.
And I see it as if we at Janji didn't talk about sustainability. So we ask our customers every year. We say how much do you care about sustainability, and how well do you think Janji is doing relative, how much you care about sustainability. And that number of how much people care about sustainability is flat. And we have a pretty big rotation as customers who are filling out this annual survey. What we've done within our own messaging is we've actually put more of the sustainability of what we're doing sort of down the priority list in messaging, just as we find in ads and A/B testing, it has less of effect, but we're still going to do it more and more. I know, for instance, our team also really cares about it, and it turns out employee retention and having a mission driven behind it is it's really important. But I would say the customer cares more about it behind the scenes than the first messaging.
We've seen brands use different tactics, different tools. There are even e-commerce enablement tools at checkout of, hey, you could round out your dollar here to buy some carbon offsets. Has Janji looked at any of that stuff, or it's a little bit too gimmicky?
Oh, yeah. We've definitely looked at it. I'm a sucker for those things, right? If I can do an emission offset for my flight, I'll save the bare bones amount on the flight, but I'll check the little extra. I'm not trying to say like I'm better than anyone. I'm far from it. Like I'm hardly perfect at things related to sustainability. But we haven't done that because we find that it's just one more thing that the customer has to think about. Should we do it? Should we test it? Probably. But I personally, I know people in our customer base have never asked for it before. Who've never had a customer support ticket say like, hey, I would buy from you, but you don't offer this carbon offset. And we try and do as much as we can on the carbon offset. You can look on our website. We have all of our own sustainability goals, how we're thinking about, not just recycled materials, but like, going deep into our supply chain, how we're sourcing sustainable fabrics, what we're trying to do with our mission to go to carbon zero. But I think the customer wants to buy great stuff at a solid price that reflects who they are. And at the end of the day, like a button on checkout that offsets carbon emissions is not really going to change anything.
Amazing. Dave, obviously you and I know each other well from the last decade, but can you share with our audience 2 minutes on who is Dave? What is Janji? What does Dave do in e-commerce? How long has Janji been around? You're always someone that I've looked up to as running a multi-channel 8-figure brand, but I'll let you brag. Please brag as much as possible.
Yeah, I could say the same thing. Like I've always looked at you and how you've seen this world. Like you're always one of the first people I ask questions to, and I think you've just got a very wise opinion on these things. And so, yeah, I mean, our story begins. My co-founder and I got Janji started back when we were in college. We ran together at Washington University in St. Louis. Came up with the idea on the bus ride to a track meet, with the idea of creating a brand where every single season we explored somewhere around the world. We connect with local artists. We create change by crafting these sustainable pieces where 2% of sales go back toward funding a water project. And there was nothing mission-driven in the run athletic space back when we got the company started. There still really isn't. Now, you can see why we care about these sustainability things, right? Because at its core, what Janji was is this mission-driven brand, and still is today. We're working. Our new line is all inspired by Mongolia, for instance. So we're going to Mongolia. We are working with really interesting abstract artists there. We just did like a Merrill collaboration with these artists in Janji, and it's about telling the story of like running is this amazing way to see the world around you. Whether you live in Sydney or we live in Somerville, Massachusetts, you can explore the world through running. And at its core, we believe that it's got this human universal potential. It sort of, links us all together. It's been a road, right? Since where we are today to back when we got started. Like we were in a business plan competition. We were in a class. We got an A in it. Actually, another company that got started in our class was called Wombat, which is a true story. I don't think I've told you this. It actually morphed a few times after we left and became Rover, like the company that just went public and got sold to Blackstone for like $2.5 billion. So we're not even like the most successful company like in our class. What we have done, I think, over time that's like have us be successful is like, one, we love the customer, we love the space. And even more recently, we were collegiate runners. We cared about running fast times. We've recently gone more and more into what we call like the explorer runner. So someone who uses running as his way to see the world, but is also doing more like trail running, ultra running. And that's been a really interesting pocket that we've been able to grow into and I think grow like pretty authentically. And so the business has, it's definitely had quite a few evolutions over the last decade. But it's been great. I think our e-commerce focus over the last few years has just been tremendous. And even this year, it'll be one of our best growth years ever digitally in the history of the company, and that's on a flat budget. And so I'm happy to sort of talk about some of the tricks and trades that we're doing to get there, but I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the fact that like we love this space, we love this customer, and we're like always listening how to like make the stuff better.
You mentioned that you're expanding into this explorer runner, you said. We talked a lot during COVID, but one of the things I recall from our COVID conversations was you saying, hey, a lot more people running. This is very good for business. I still see all of my social feed, like running clubs, trail running. Are we at peak running, or has it softened a little bit since COVID?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, what the stats say is running is still going up. I want to believe we are not at peak running. And you can see there's all these macro factors as to why people are running more, right? Is it Is it the GLP-1s, right? People are losing weight, running more frequently. Is it the fact that like we're all glued to this glowing rectangle in our pockets or in front of our face, and we want to like get out and go for a run and sort of meet people? You know, you hear about this dating app fatigue. Bizarrely, like recently, we got tagged in Diplo, the DJ. He was he has a Diplo run club, you know, and he does these like single days where people like single runners come in and sort of talk about, you know, they meet people on this run, and he's wearing like a Janji jacket, and it's like, you know, when Diplo goes in there, I guess this is becoming pretty mainstream. And I think, you know, what people are seeing more and more is you can find these communities, of course, offline, right? And running has this sort of meditative aspect that allows you to sort of remove from like your day to day. Look, like, do I listen to a few podcasts when I go for a run and carry my phone? Like, absolutely. But I'm not glued to it. I'm not checking the news. I'm not checking social media. And I think it's like that part, which is why people are running more and more. And to your point about like group runs, like that's certainly sort of, you know, bearing out, at least in my feeds too. In terms of trail running, which has grown 236% over the last 10 years and 12% last year alone, it's really, I think, that escapism, right? Like, you know, we're all getting hit with, you know, digital ads, and we're all so in the business that having that escapism can be very, very powerful.
As you're saying that, I'm getting a nervous shiver down my spine that marketers are like, yes, we need to be building billboards inside trails.
Yes. Support outside. Yeah. Let's commercialize it.
Let's put a bunch of banners up on trees in trails and start selling CPMs.
I mean, look, our our marketer would probably love that in a lot of ways. But there's obviously a sanctity to the outdoors that probably runs, you know, counter to that. Well, look, I think that, you know, for us, what's been very interesting is like there's this really tricky balance to walk in the communities that we play in, right? Where you want to come across as authentic and not over commercialize, and people can sort of smell like a fraud from a mile away. And I think it's like that part which has been interesting because, you know, to your point, it's like whatever community you go into, you want to come across as like quite authentic and part of it. And the more authentic you are, the more you can actually, you know, drop your CPMs, because people just see you not needing ads to sort of be reminded as being like the brand in that space. And we've been working really hard to sort of build that within trail and ultra, and for that we call Explore Runner.
Yeah, amazing. Speaking of distribution and communities, you started online. Now you have large retail footprint. I'd love to hear about your channel expansion journey, and then specifically how you think about channel mix today.
Yes, we got started as like a wholesale brand, basically. While getting Janji sort of off the ground, I worked at a running store in St. Louis, Big River Running Company, shout out. Only job I've really ever had outside of like college jobs and high school jobs before starting Janji. And, you know, we really believed in this channel of specialty. And in many ways I still do. Like I love specialty. I love what it can bring. But the reality of where we're at is that that specialty mix has moved more, I would say, in terms of run specialties, moved more to like fitting people for shoes, fitting people for orthotics, and buying less clothing. And so I would say a huge strategic misstep that we made really in like the first 6 years of the business was trying to go a little too hard in that mix. I'm trying to focus in too hard actually on wholesale, and specifically like the specialty stores. And again, love them all dearly. Like, I think they're great. But they'll tell you themselves, like it's been a really hard decade for them with apparel, because especially with digital growing, but also like, you know, athletic apparel businesses, you know, Lululemon, Athleta, competing in their own stores with far more aggressive merchandising mix. Carrying like a few shorts and shirts is just not a great experience for the consumer. So we actually started like actually more of the online focus way too late. You know, I've made a lot of mistakes during my time, and that was a big mistake. But today, the nice thing is we're built in many ways for that wholesale margin mix. You know, we have very strong margins because we've always thought like, okay, we need to be decently profitable in these wholesale channels. And so, of course, when you sell direct, you've just got a much better mix. And so today we're like 70, or like we're about like 65-35. Direct versus wholesale. For
the brands that we have, when we're thinking about channel expansion, one of the blockers for us is often working capital management, AP, AR cycle, inventory planning. We've made mistakes by underappreciating how much chaos that can cause, how much more planning work that requires. Yeah, can you talk a little bit about kind of lessons learned on AR management, working capital management, inventory when you're selling in multiple channels and dealing with different vendors?
Yeah, I mean, look, wholesale comes with a host of problems. People aren't paying their bills on time. But it also comes with, like, I would say, like a big solution in terms of like factoring, in terms of PO financing, in terms of knowing the quantities that people want from you. And look, there are definitely going to be those wholesalers that like slash orders and totally say like, we got to look out for our own. We've been very fortunate to not have that. I think like we have a very nice industry. Like people here are like very nice in like the outdoor and running industry. And you can think of all the big players out there, like they're all like pretty nice people and very reasonable and very thoughtful. And so, look, if you're ordering, let's say 10,000 black shorts, right, for this one customer, you're likely going to be ordering it, financing it, sending it over, and then being able to factor it. So you can create this sort of negative working capital structure, assuming, of course, you've got terms with your factories. And that's been a huge component of what we've been doing, right? Is we've worked with a lot of the same factory partners for years and years and years. It's relationship building. I've taken, thoughtful advice from other entrepreneurs, which is like, build those relationships, ask for those terms, right? Because you want to make sure they're making a profit and they know they can trust you to pay them. And so, you can imagine a situation in which you are running a consumer business, you're effectively getting a pre-order from factories, which is what we're getting, pre-order from our wholesalers. We get those like 8-9 months in advance, make those products, ship those products, have 30, 45, 60 days to pay, and are paid much earlier. So that negative cash flow working cycle helps us with our digital business, because now suddenly, because digital stuff does not sell out in 10 days, right? After it ships, it's got to be received, and that's the minimum amount. And so, I would say like we've been very fortunate, I think, to actually have that mix be very helpful. It also requires some people who are pretty aggressive with AR, right?
Yeah.
Cannot lose track of your AR and have that bad debt just float. And we've had a great debt partner, Assembled Brands. They've been awesome for 5.5 years. We've scaled very nicely with them, but they have just been fabulous. So if anyone's looking for an intro to them, I highly recommend and happy to make it. You got to find the right debt partner to scale.
No, big fan of Michael and Ethan and the team over there, for sure. And now, as promised, we have Jacob here from Finaloop, Head of Education, to double-click into some financial best practices for e-commerce businesses. So Jacob, Dave was talking about how being a business with 2 channels or 3 channels, online, retail, potentially even wholesale, makes managing working capital a little bit tricky. He specifically mentioned that you really need to be on top of chasing AR. Finaloop has a lot of clients that are multi-channel. We ourselves have omni-channel, and it's so important to stay on top of AR and AP. Tell us a little bit about why it's important and how it ties into inventory.
Yes, so regarding AR and AP, so I'll kind of just try to explain what they are and dig in a little bit deeper. So AR, AP stands for accounts receivable and accounts payable, and accounts receivable would be on the asset side of your balance sheet, and accounts payable would be on the liability side. So pretty much what it means is when I'm doing accrual-based accounting, I should be doing accrual-based accounting, is that accounts receivable reflect services or goods that I provided, but I was not yet paid for. For example, if I sell goods, my inventory to a wholesaler and their terms are met 30 or 60 or whatever, they have time until they can pay me back. So in that time period, that would be defined as my account receivable. If you're selling DTC, it generally comes up much less because the payments are usually immediate. And then on the other side, the exact opposite, I have my accounts payable, which is money that I owe, meaning services or goods that I consumed, but I did not yet pay for. So that's much more prevalent in the world of D2C. I made my inventory orders or have other bill payables, etc., that I owe to third parties and I did not yet pay. So that would be liability on the liability side of my balance sheet. Optimization of my accounts receivable, again, if I have it, and of my accounts payable is really crucial for managing your cash flow and for your cash conversion cycle. We'll dig into it more elsewhere, but just very high level, a cash conversion cycle looks into how long it takes you to convert your inventory into cash. So there are pretty much three parts of the equation, being days of accounts payable, of accounts receivable, and of my inventory. Taking into account that on the one hand, even after I get my inventory, it takes time till I sell it, and after I sell it, it still takes time until the money hits my account. And then on the other hand, even after I order the inventory, I don't necessarily pay because I have a certain lag time with my accounts payable. So all of that is my conversion cycle, my cash conversion cycle. And the shorter it is, the better, and I'll have the cash faster and need less money for financing, can have another cycle to sell potentially, etc. So you want to be managing your ARs and APs really well, and specific, have spreadsheets or software knowing how much you owe, managing your APs and also managing your ARs per customer, knowing if you have problematic wholesalers, etc. that might not pay or might pay later. Taking that and putting that into your cash flow forecasting on both sides, both the AR and the AP side, is really important, and trying to minimize your cycle as much as possible by kind of extending your AP time and reducing your AR time, which will allow you to have a shorter cash conversion cycle. And just as a last note, a lot of times private equities that get involved in e-commerce companies, one of the first things they do, and after firing the redundant employees, they'll actually start speaking to all the various customers, vendors, suppliers, etc., and try to shorten that cycle in order to make your business more efficient.
Great. And back to the episode. As you've grown your digital direct business, there are a lot of approaches to growth in terms of resourcing, in-house, single individual contributor, small team format, interplay with agency, or running a very lean and even fractional. What lessons have you learned? How do you think about it today?
Well, look, I would say we're still learning. It's not perfect. We've tried a lot of things. This is sort of where we're at today, right? Is we've got someone great internally who's able to manage freelancers who we pay a rate, I think at a relatively reasonable rate to manage these platforms. I think there are great agencies, and I think those great agencies tend to be all about who you get to work with at those agencies. And if you suddenly switch, account reps, it can be really tough. And we've historically just liked the consistency of a single person who we can go to with these sort of core questions. And we're also, the belief is look, we're a business. We cannot have, we're a business in that can't have super high SG&A costs. And that is, all about being very thoughtful as to which freelancer people you're willing to play with. And so I see if you find the right agency and you're willing to pay them 7, 8, 9, 10, 11%, right, of digital fees, it can totally make sense. And I think it's all about smaller and having the right people that you're working with all the time, or finding something like we have on the freelance side. There's no right answer, and there's no one system I think it fits. It's all about the individual.
Yeah, no, our experience with agencies very much mirrors that, as much as the person that is on the account, just like with any kind of couponer, supplier, yes, 3PL, etc., they've also got their own dynamics. So if they're in high growth phase and dealing with growing pains, that's going to impact the performance. And then what you're trading for that is hopefully a team that is on the frontier always and is absolutely focused on the best practices of performance marketing and paid to do so. And so that's kind of the trade-off you're always considering.
It's interesting you see it on the 3PL side too, right? Because if you sort of look at your partners, right? It's your factory partners, it's your agency partners, it's your 3PL partner, right? And we found that we've worked at the same 3PL for years, and I love them dearly. We have had to heavily manage them, and that's one of our skill sets. We're really good on the ops side at managing our 3PL, and they have a rate that is, and they have a rate that is suggests that they need to be managed right in many ways, and they are very fast in many ways in sort of turning product around, which has been great. But I know other people who work with it who have a really tough time because they don't know how to manage it the right way. Agencies are similar, right? And so I think you need to sort of figure out what is in your skill set. Are you very into managing? And you have a skill set in the marketing side to manage these agencies as you want it to be? Or is it more of a laissez-faire situation? And for us, we tend to be pretty heavy-handed with our partners. And so if we can do that, we're willing to sort of drive down costing there.
Jacob and Fan here again. It was really interesting to hear Dave talk about needing to manage his 3PL tightly. We often see in our brands that cost of delivery is a very underestimated section of the P&L, especially given that it can easily take up 15 to 25 points of net revenue. Help us understand how Finaloop thinks about creating more visibility around shipping costs and overall cost of delivery for their clients through the Finaloop portal.
First of all, as you said, shipping can be very big. It can end up being a very significant portion of a business's sales, especially in businesses where the items being shipped are larger, like in garden, outdoors kind of spaces. So it's definitely just being aware of those expenses, looking at them holistically, trying to negotiate the prices down, and really keeping very on top of my unit economics, taking those shipping costs into account. One other point regarding shipping is a lot of businesses tend to kind of push the shipping down into my operating expenses portion of the P&L. So the way it really should be accounted for, it should be within my COGS, and there's two kinds of shipping. There's shipping in, which means shipping into my final warehouse, and those shipping expenses should actually be part of my product COGS and capitalized and recognized when those items are actually sold. And then I have shipping out costs, meaning the shipping from my warehouse to the doorstep of my customer, which would be non-product COGS and expensed immediately. But in any event, they should be part above my gross margin line and should not be thrown down into my operating expenses. So in general, just to kind of sum it up, shipping, it could be a really big expense. Stay on top of it, try to negotiate the prices down, make sure you're doing your unit economics and analysis, and make sure that your shipping is actually in the right place within your P&L.
Excellent. And back to the episode. I feel like at the intersection of what we talked about earlier, sustainability, and what we just talked about now of growth marketing, is Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
Yeah.
And are you now seeing quite a few Black Friday, Cyber Mondays?
I have.
How are you thinking about this year? Are you guys trying kind of anything different?
I mean, it's a weird year because it's like in some ways like the shortest possible holiday season, right? I think the 25th is like on like a Tuesday or Wednesday, I forget. And so it just really messes up shipping. Thanksgiving is super late this year. So it's pretty like not ideal for us, right? For the retailers of the world, it's golden, right? All the people looking at those last minute gifts is gold. So for us, we moved up Black Friday chunk, just knowing the calendars. We're playing around with some more aggressive gifts with purchase earlier on for sort of taking a page out of the Nick Sharma playbook where he suggested like first 500 people who order on Black Friday get like a hat. We're doing that. And then we've done historically like these like 1 day deals. I'm assuming, we that's all about like, problem styles we want to get rid of. But for the most part, we're doing a relatively standard Black Friday sale, but just a little longer period, just given sort of how tricky the timing is of this Black Friday season, or this holiday season.
Yeah, the gift of purchase is definitely my favorite. If we were to rank, promos, we'll maybe have a whole episode on this of, the 50 different promo tactics. But yeah, gift with purchase is definitely my favorite as a seller, at least.
I hope it does well. Yeah, because as a buyer, it's like it totally depends, right? How much value am I getting? Yeah. We've done like a gift with purchase with a pin before, and let me tell you, it didn't drive customer value. We were hoping it would. Yeah. I'm like, here, you get a pin. It's like worth $8, and just like, no thanks, I don't care about that. This year, it's a much more giving. Like I got like a very nice beanie away. It's just like a $42 item. TBD. It's the first time doing it like in a really meaningful way.
This is why I love talking to Dave. He's so operationally on top of his business. I thought that was a great snippet for our audience. His point for Christmas Eve this year being on a Tuesday, which probably means that Monday is too late to receive deliveries, or at least leaves it too tight, which means that you probably need to get it the Friday or Saturday. And all of that means that it ends up being a slightly shortened holiday period, as opposed to kind of Christmas Eve being a Thursday or Friday. Also great to hear his little inside scoop that gift with purchase will be the main campaign this year. Jacob, help our listeners think through, what are you learning from Finaloop customers around dates for Black Friday, Cyber Monday this year? How should they be planning for it?
Yeah, so regarding Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and holiday season this year, as you said, the day that Christmas falls out, A and B, just the way the calendar is built, Cyber Monday actually comes out in December this year, as opposed to last year. So that just pretty much means I'm having more of a condensed sales season. So that's worth keeping in mind and taking into account with respect to your inventory planning and cash forecasting. And also when I'm just kind of comparing and trying to forecast year over year, and especially month over month, last year, Cyber Monday was in November, and this year it's in December. Take that into account and adjust for that properly. So we have a more condensed sales season that we need to take into account when planning our inventory and our cash. Now, just general concepts or thoughts of what you need to take into account before the holiday season are we've talked about this in the past, unit economics, really doing per SKU analysis, seeing exactly how much you're spending, not having one SKU cover others to make sure that it really is a profitable item. And then number two, looking at and building your price per item and seeing that price matches what your margins need to look like, especially taking discounts into account, right? Discounts are huge when it comes to BFCM and holiday season, and you have to keep up with your competition, but you need to really, really be on top of your discounts and make sure that at the end of the day, at the bottom line, that you are profitable for this particular SKU, especially in industries like ours. It's really, really important to do either 13-week or even more granular cash flow forecasting, so you can really be on top of how much cash you have, how much you need. If you have ARs, putting those into the formula to make sure that you don't end up needing to run and take out a last-minute MCA or whatever, and really trying to be on top of your cash flows.
Excellent. And back to the episode. We talked about community earlier, run clubs. You've built a in-person culture in Somerville. You've kind of been committed to the area. How do you think about local talent, national talent, international talent versus kind of being based in Somerville?
In many ways, this is like the HR question of our times, right? Look, at the end of the day, we make stuff, right? We're not software engineers. We make really good, high quality product that needs to be touched and worn and seen and be around, and that's the most important thing that we do, right? If we're not really good at making really high quality gear, our business ceases to exist. And so having an in-person culture is really important. It's interesting. We also we've kept the same policy of in office since April 2021 or whenever the vaccine started coming out, where it's 2 days in the office, and we don't really want to hire someone who doesn't live here. Now, some people move, right? And we have great team members who move, and we hate it when they move, but they're great team members, and so we want to keep them on board. And I think there's only one exception of someone who just works at Janji who we've hired remotely, and her position is benefited from being remote. She lives in Bozeman. She's our community. She does a lot of community and athlete manager work, and the sort of people we sponsor don't live in Boston. They're much more likely to live in a Bozeman or Boulder or Bend. So yeah, I'm a little old school. I'm in the office 5 days a week. I believe in being around product and being around people, but I think we've come the other way in many ways. But really, I heard this from one person who runs a business in our space, and he said, once you do the remote thing fully, there's no putting that toothpaste back in the bottle, right? It's just impossible. And so for us, it's setting that culture from the ground level and having people be around the product piece.
I love that for you guys. As we start to head toward a wrap, just a kind of couple of fun questions. You've been in e-commerce for a decade. What would you tell your e-commerce operator self from 10 years ago? Well,
10 years ago, focus more on e-commerce. I think we get into this trap of hitting the quarterly numbers, the monthly numbers, conversion rates a little low. At the end of the day, this process is about long-term value. You sort of look at the Fortune 500. You definitely, Forbes 500 are the wealthiest people in the world. You absolutely have a lot of tech billionaires in there, but you also got a lot of people who are in consumer and retail, right? And these are people who build businesses over decades and decades and decades. And I think for us, it's you never want to get into cheap tricks to hit sales goals. Never. And I think whether it's trying to do Instagram arbitrage or sort of running, if you're not a values a value brand, like running aggressive promos, like it all comes down to bite you, right? Maybe it's in 3 months, maybe it's in 3 years. But if you're driving like really great branding and really great quality product, and you're not a value brand like a Shein or a Fashion Nova, you can do amazing things even if you're willing to take that short-term medicine. And so it's, for us, it's all about like every decision that we make, how does that affect us in like 25 and 26 and 27? It's like, are we perfect at it? No. But like if I were to use more of that framework from day one, I'd be infinitely happier, and I think like we would have built an even more meaningful business.
Makes so much sense, and so excited for the next Janji decade. What's in Dave's content diet around e-commerce?
Oh, well, now this podcast. Yeah, I mean, I'm a podcast listener. There's, I would say, annoyingly, like a lack of great podcasts in this marketer direct-to-consumer space. I listen to like Nerd Marketing. I listen to Limited Supply, right? But I think there can be a lot more here. In terms of like in our space, there's like more like outdoor niche industry specific stuff like Rock Fight and Second Nature than there's in all of like, I feel like ecom marketing. So get very excited for this. And I like Rock Fight, I like Second Nature. I like Think Like an Owner. It's like boring businesses in a lot of ways. I like learning bizarrely around like franchises and like how franchises operate, because I find that model, and a lot of these franchise, not like the franchisors, but like the franchisees get like really deep into their business and how they do it, and they're like, here, open the curtain here and sort of see how it's run. And then I like the Bloombergs of the world, just in terms of like consuming it every day, and a few newsletters here and there, like 2 p.m. as well.
What is your favorite Janji product at the moment that the audience needs to go and check out these holidays, and either for themselves or to gift? What's your favorite at the moment?
Yeah, so look for that beanie on Black Friday. Our most requested item is like our men's half tights. Our men's straw half tights, they're the best in the business, but I think most places are not wearing like spandex shorts with like 8 different pockets on them. So we've got a great Circa Daily t-shirt and our classic men's 5-inch AFO middle shorts, which have both won a ton of awards, the latter of which won like Runner's World's Gear of the Year. So I would definitely recommend checking out that for men's, for women's, and a lot of our trail bottoms as well, if you're into having pieces with a lot of pockets on them.
Amazing. Well, I strongly recommend our audience go and check out Janji these holidays. Dave, thanks so much for spending the time with us. Always fun to catch up, and thanks so much for sharing your advice with the audience.
This is a blast. Hope it was helpful.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Margin Talks by Finaloop. Don't forget to like and subscribe on the channel you're listening to. If you have any questions or feedback, feel free to email me, fan@thehedgehogcompany.com. And if you'd like to see what Finaloop can do for your e-commerce business, please visit finaloop.com. We'll see you on the next one.